The first thing I want to point out about using data annotations is that while all of the data annotations live inside of the namespace system.componentmodel.data annotations, some of these come in the data annotations assembly, but some of them come from the Entity Framework assembly, the Entity Framework 4.1 assembly. So I've already made references to both of those in the domain classes project, and I have the namespace specified in my using statements for the classes. The first annotation I want to show you is related to that assumption or the convention that the property representing your identity key will be named either ID or the name of the class plus ID, so in this case blog ID. So I'm going to change this to something completely random, random key. And I'll go ahead and run the project again. And you can see that I get an exception thrown which says that blog has no key defined. Okay, that's because it didn't find something with ID or blog ID. Now, CodeFirst isn't saying that you have to create your classes based on its conventions. That would certainly be a problem for a lot of people. The whole point here is that we can define the classes the way we want them to be, and then use configurations to help things along. So one of the data annotations we have available to us is the key annotation. Now that I've said the property random key is actually going to be my identity key, CodeFirst will be happy again. And for what it's worth, key is inside of the data annotations assembly, not the entity framework assembly. Some other typical annotations you can use are the max length and min length. I'll just throw max length onto title, max length 20, so I don't have to work too hard to break that rule. Min length looks just the same. And I'll use another one on blogger name called required. Max length comes in the entity framework assembly. Required comes in the data annotations assembly. Now I've modified the create blog method to create a new blog with no blogger name. Remember, the blogger name is required now, and a blog title that's longer than 20 characters. I've also thrown a very cheesy exception handler in there to catch the exception, just so that I can look at it while we're debugging in this demo mode, because I expect an exception to be thrown. So I'll go ahead and run this. And again, I'm adding a new blog with no blogger name, where the blogger name is required and the title is longer than the expected title. I've already drilled into the exception in Quick Watch, and what the exception includes is entity validation errors. One of the other great features inside of Entity 4.1 is a whole API for validations. There's actually a number of ways we can take advantage of them, and they all throw entity validation errors. So this entity validation error says that I have an entity with some problems, and so it's a single entity. That's why I just got one entity validation error back, but it has multiple problems inside of it. So you can see I have two validation errors within there. The first one is the error on the title, and it gives me a dynamically created error message. I can specify my own error message in the annotation if I want to. So it's got a problem with the title because it exceeds the length of 20, and it's got a problem with blogger name because it's required. This may not be the most desirable way to capture the errors. One of the really cool things about the validation errors is that some of the .NET applications also use these errors. If I was creating a dynamic data ASP.NET website, these errors would automatically be captured and displayed on the screen. And MVC3 will do this also. We could take advantage of client-side validation with those applications, or we can let Entity Framework do server-side validation. CodeFirst is actually going to respond in two ways. One of them is that it provides the validation automatically. The other is the impact on the database. Here's the new database, and just so you know, I actually deleted the database and let CodeFirst recreate it. There are also features in CodeFirst that'll automatically do that, and I'll show you those in a few minutes. So take a look at the columns of blog now. Now my primary key field is called random key, right, because that's what I called it now, but it automatically knew that that was a primary key and it's not nullable. Title is now specified with a length of 20, and blogger name, because it's required, is now specified as non-nullable. So whether I want CodeFirst to define my database that way Or I'm already working with a database that has these specifications, and I want to be sure that my classes map properly to these things. I can use those annotations to help the classes along. Let's take a look at the Fluent API now to make some of these changes as well.